These projections on today's episode are going to absolutely shock you. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. I am Lucas Wenzel, and as always, I am joined by my fellow co-hosts, Cameron Lawrence and Tyler Plath. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Very well. Doing good.
That's what we like to hear. We're going to have plenty of time to talk with each other on this podcast episode because we are going through some of our most shocking projections from our newly released 2023 draft guide. You can get your hands on that down in the link of the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Hey, if you even want it for free and you don't have to go to the sign up link, you can join Underdog Fantasy with our code FELLAS. Join any of their contests and you'll get that draft guide for free. That is all you have to do. We'll get notified. Underdog will let us know when you've joined a league, and we will make sure that draft guide gets to you. So that is $10 down in the description again. Or if you want it for absolutely free, join any of Underdog's fantasy contests, and you will get that for free. All of our projections are coming out of that draft guide today. Over 240 projections on players. We're dropping videos on the top 100 players with a few of our thoughts. There is so much in that draft guide to unpack. You will not want to miss that. But fellas, I won't keep the people waiting any longer. Let's dive into the projections. That's what they're here for. They're not here to hear me ramble for a minute. Let's talk about some shocking projections. I should also say, if you aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast, make sure you do that right now. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, we'd appreciate you leaving a review as well. That would help us out immensely. And if you're on YouTube and you subscribe, turn on those notifications. You'll get alerted when all of our new videos are going up. We got short form going up. We got new podcasts coming out as well. We're going to drop some medium form, 15-minute form content here soon as well. So that will be coming out, and turn on those notifications so you know when those are going up. Fellas, let's dive into shocking projections. Straight from our 2023 draft guide. It's about to get heated. Here's how we're going to do it. I'll have you name your player. I'll have you make the case for your player.
All right.
And the other two fellas are going to get some time to refute your point or give their reason why they are out on that player. So, Cameron, I'm going to have you kick us off here. Who is your first shocking projection? I should probably add as well, this might be players that we are 100% in on or 100% out on compared to the other two fellas. The odd, and we'll be at odds with each other here. We will be at odds. We'll have cases to make. So, Cameron, your first shocking projection from our 2023 draft guide
is Christian Watson. And I have foreshadowed this. I have said this multiple times, continuously ripped on Tyler about it. But Lucas shares the blame as well. I have Christian Watson as my wide receiver 40 right now. Lucas has him as wide receiver 26, and Ty has him wide receiver 22. In best ball drafts, he's going as the wide receiver 20. My shares of Christian Watson are 0, so I don't have to worry about him being bad on my fantasy team because he won't be on my team. In 2023, I do have him projected for 101 targets, about 65 receptions, a little under 900 yards, and about 5 touchdowns. In 2022, his 17-game pace from week 10 to week 18, when everybody loved him, was 108 targets, 66 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 15 touchdowns. There's a chance Jordan Love doesn't even throw 15 touchdowns again this season, just himself. So I'm not too worried about Christian Watson exploding for touchdowns. He also had 17 yards per catch. Obviously, his profile does suggest a guy who's going to have bigger plays. You know, we look at Christian Watson, he's got the speed and athleticism to make that happen. But the thing that scares me about Christian Watson is we fell in love with him for the same reason we fell in love with Chase Claypool. And I've said it all offseason. I think he's the Chase Claypool of this season, and that's just touchdown production. He had a quarterback who was more elite towards the end of their career. Same with Chase Claypool. It was 2 years before Big Ben really fell off. He had Chase Claypool. And the thing for Christian Watson is he is lacking just a college profile at all. This dude did not really perform at North Dakota State. He never had a 1,000-yard season. In fact, Cooper Kupp almost had more receptions and yards in one season in college than Christian Watson did over his entire 3 seasons. So just to put in perspective how limited his college profile was at an FCS school. And the other part of it is I just don't truly believe in Jordan Love. I don't think he's the answer in Green Bay. I don't think he's going to put up, I think he might barely hit 3,500 yards this season. I don't think he's going to put up elite touchdowns. And so just because I don't believe that Christian Watson's going to turn into an elite receiver, I do think he is an elite athlete and he'll have some amazing spike games, I believe. But I don't think he's going to be this wide receiver that's all of a sudden top 25 this year.
So who's the wide receiver one in Green Bay to you?
I do have Christian Watson, but I do think that production-wise, Aaron Jones is the guy to have receiving. I think he actually might end up with more receptions than Jordan Love or Christian Watson this season.
So you brought up his 17 game pace from
Yep.
last year during his phenomenal stretch.
Mhm.
Correct me, 108 targets. How many receptions did you have him out for?
66 receptions.
So that's what's fascinating is like I have Christian Watson, excuse me, statted out for almost exactly that. I have him 110 targets, 70 receptions, 13.8 yards of reception, so just shy of 14 yards. You said he was at like 17 yards of reception or something like that.
Yep.
And I have him for half as many touchdowns. He's still my wide receiver 26.
Yeah.
So like I think there's this I think we have to start counting him as the wide receiver one. Alan Lazard isn't in town anymore. I don't think it's going to be Romeo Doubs. Like, yeah, they spent a pick on Jane Reed. Thank you. In the second round this year. I don't think he just comes in and takes over wide receiver one duties. Like, I think it's Christian Watson is pretty clearly the guy. Yeah, but you're right. I don't think he gets insane touchdown volume, but I also think like something has to be said about him just being the wide receiver one and commanding 110 plus targets.
Yeah.
Again, I have him statted out for basically that same volume he was getting just for half as many touchdowns, and he's still my wide receiver 26.
Yeah, I think the difference is I just have much lower yards. I just don't see Jordan Love truly stretching the field with him. I only, like I said, only around 900 yards. And I'm sure yardage as we go throughout the season, that will come back up. That does feel low now, kind of saying it out loud.
I mean, I have him at 973.
So
I have him less than 1,000 yards.
Yeah, and I've only got him at 5 touchdowns. And the touchdowns is strictly because I just don't think this Green Bay passing attack is going to score a ton.
Which I think that's what it comes down to. I think.
Yeah.
How much do you think they're going to score? I think Watson, whenever they're in the red zone, I think Watson's going to be the guy. But Ty, I'll let you pop in here.
No, I think that the thing is, if you're drafting Christian Watson expecting, the later half of 2022, if you're expecting that Christian Watson for this year, you're going to be disappointed. But it really does just come down to it's Christian Watson and Aaron Jones when it comes to the receiving work. And so I'm expecting Green Bay to really have the run game as the primary, option in this offense. And then off of play action, you got Christian Watson cutting across the field, either going deep and stuff. And like, I have him just barely over 1,000 yards, but with his receptions, he's then averaging about 15 yards a catch, which like makes sense for the deep threat that Christian Watson is. But all of that I will say is I don't put a Chase Claypool label on Christian Watson.
That's too harsh. I agree with that. That's too harsh. I know that's the hill you're going to die on, but like, my goodness.
This is my hill for 2023. This is my new Miles Sanders.
Why?
Man.
That's the only thing I'll say. Like, yes, I think Christian Watson, right, as a sophomore wide receiver, and you look at the Drake Londons and the Chris Olaves of the world, like, I think those guys have a better chance of taking a leap forward than Christian Watson does. But again, the situation just kind of has to keep him somewhere between, as high as 20 in some leagues, like in best ball, or, high end flex, because there's literally no one else there.
Yeah, makes sense.
Ty, we'll move on to your shocking projection here. I mean, I think there is a legit case to be made about Christian Watson, though, that like his ADP in best ball might be too rich.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a real case to say that Christian Watson like probably will come down in touchdowns. He will come down in touchdowns this year. It's a matter of how much. I just have him splitting his 17 game pace last year when he was on fire. And then, it depends on how efficient you think this Green Bay offense is going to be.
Yeah.
Again, Cameron, your preference is Aaron Jones. Mine is Christian Watson is a wide receiver 1, and I think he'll be treated as such. And I mean, if he can go up and get one in the red zone, they're going to go to him every single time, as far as I'm concerned.
That's true.
So, but again, we can agree to disagree.
Mhm.
We'll agree to disagree, and we'll still manage to be friends on camera. Off camera, we'll be hostile and violent towards each other.
Yeah.
Tyler, we'll kick it over to you next. Who is your first shocking projection after Cameron decided to just directly basically attack you right off the bat?
Yeah, my first guy is Mike Evans, and he's currently my wide receiver 38. And if I'm not mistaken, let's see, where do you guys have him at? Yeah, 30 and 27 for you guys. And for me, I've got Mike Evans behind guys like Cortland Sutton, Michael Thomas, and Jahan Dotson. And, that may not mean much because you don't, what else is going around in that area of the projections. But I do have him set it out for 101 targets, which is a 19.6% target share, 64 receptions, 877 yards, which is 13.7 yards per catch and 5 touchdowns. This is purely the Baker Mayfield effect. We've known Mike Evans the past couple of years with Tom Brady to be the, high-end touchdown productive wide receiver who is going to be down the field more. And Chris Godwin was then kind of the safety blanket for Brady. But now we have Baker Mayfield. And, the Baker Mayfield effect, is a fancy way of just saying that Baker is very, very inconsistent. And, you look at Baker's completion percentage in his career, he sits at 61.3. I'll entertain a debate to see if that's average, if that's decent, but in my book, that's not good enough. His yards per attempt in Cleveland, right, his first 4 years in the league, he was averaging 7.3 yards per attempt. He goes to Carolina last year, he was at 6.4, so a whole yard less. Then he goes to the Rams, and they kept him at 6.6. Coaches don't really trust Baker to go downfield as much. And that favors Chris Godwin more than it does Mike Evans. And I think people still look at the resume of Mike Evans and they see a 7 season long streak of 1,000 yards receiving.
I think it's 8 now.
It's 8 now.
Yep.
They see touchdown production and all that kind of stuff, and they think, oh, there's no way that Mike Evans can drop off that much. But here's what it comes down to. First thing, can Baker be consistent enough? And the second thing is, can this offense generate enough touchdowns to help players like Chris Godwin, like Mike Evans, like Rachaad White, like Cade Otton, right, starting tight end? Can this offense generate enough touchdowns to help these players be productive in fantasy? I don't really think so. And if there's one player I would bet on, it's Chris Godwin, because Baker has to throw the ball to somebody. And Rachaad White is higher in my rankings, but that's just kind of an ugly volume kind of thing that keeps him up there. So, Mike Evans is not for me. He may be for some other people, but just seeing the situation that he's in, it's very, very bleak, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with anything you just said. That's the thing. I have Mike Evans statted out for 7 touchdowns, but if I bump him down to 6, he all of a sudden goes from my wide receiver 27 to my wide receiver 34. And I think I might go bump him down a touchdown right now. I might bump him down to 6. So I don't think anything you said is crazy at all. I agree with it. My only counterpoint would be, again, it's the red zone threat. Mike Evans is somehow going to just find his way into the end zone, and if they're going to throw a jump ball when they're in the red zone, it's going to go to Mike Evans. Now, will they do that every time? No. And should you always bank on red zone production for total touchdowns? No, absolutely not. But that's one of those where I think if they are in the red zone, Mike Evans is going to be the guy, not Chris Godwin. Cameron, go ahead and make your point. I want to see what Mike Evans' red zone numbers were last year, but I don't disagree with anything you just said, Ty.
Yeah, my thing for Mike Evans is with this offense, Rashad White, like we said, he was not an efficient back last year. He was 3.7 yards per carry. They're not going to rely on the run game. Bruce Arians is, he's a guy, or he's helping Byron Leftwich. They're both, both kind of offensive minded in the same way. We saw Tom Brady last year not look great, and if I'm not mistaken, the Bucs led the league in attempts.
Yep.
I think that Baker's going to throw the ball enough this year that he's going to just have the volume to, I think this whole Bucs team, Godwin, Evans, Rashad White, they're the team that if you draft them, I think they'll be all right for fantasy, but don't watch the game.
No,
because you're going to sit there and be like, man, Mike Evans had 15 targets today and 6 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown. It's going to be like, he could have had 1,000 yards, but Baker missed him 18 times wide open. And I think that's going to be the frustrating part of Mike Evans, but I think he's going to get just enough targets to where he'll kind of ugly his way. And even that, I only have him as a wide receiver 30, right? That's a mid-tier flex. I'm not saying he's a wide receiver 2 anymore. I think all of us agree those days are kind of gone where you can trust Mike Evans to finish there. So I just don't have him that far down just because I do think this team's going to throw the ball enough just because they're like, you know what? Screw it. We're not going to be great anyways. Let's might as well just try to have fun on offense doing it.
Here's what's crazy about Mike Evans. So he was 22nd in red zone targets last year. He only had 14. He caught 7 of those passes though. He ran 578 routes last year. Mm-hmm. That was the 6th most. You ready for this stat? He was 40th in route participation.
That's crazy.
So he ran he ran a route on only 85.5% of the team's pass plays.
It's because they had like 715 last year.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, they threw the ball a crap ton, but still, like wide receiver 1 and 2, Chris Evans. Nah, that's an actor. Captain America is playing for the Buccaneer. That's a helmet, man.
A helmet.
Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, man, wide receiver 1 or 2, and Mike Evans can't even be out there 90% of the time. I assume he'll have to be with Baker Mayfield, but
yeah,
I don't know, man. I'm going to bring that number down, and I'm going to be right with Ty on this one, I think.
Yeah, the last point too. The Bucs do have a new offensive coordinator in Dave Canales, who comes over from Seattle.
Yep.
He was a quarterback's coach last year in Seattle, and we all remembered Geno's season last year. So, maybe there's some optimism that Canales can actually, rejuvenate Baker a little bit because of the track record with Geno. But I've seen enough Baker to say, no thanks, not me, not this year.
I get that.
Yeah, I can't refute that at all whatsoever. I don't know if we could be saying that about Russell Wilson this year, though. I sneaky think we might have to change our opinion on Russell Wilson because I'm going to transition and talk about one of his weapons, Jerry Jeudy. He's my wide receiver 15 right now. Cam and Ty, you both have him outside of your top 20. You both have him at 21, so not a massive discrepancy, but I find it shocking that you two don't have Jeudy as a top 20 option because if Judy's going to have a breakout, this is going to be the year to do it. You have second year of Russell Wilson now. You have Sean Payton, who came over now, or not came over. Sean Payton is now the head coach of that team, who's worked with the true short king, Drew Brees, in the past, right? So Sean Payton's not unfamiliar with working with small quarterbacks. Here's the thing about Jerry Jeudy, though. After returning from his injury in week 13, he's the wide receiver 6. Oh my goodness. He was the wide receiver 6 overall, averaging 18.5 fantasy points per game. He was 8th in receptions. He was 5th in yards. He scored 3 touchdowns. I was tied for second most. On the season, you ready for this? He was top 20 in the following metrics: yards after catch, yards per reception, yards per target, fantasy points per target, fantasy points per route run, and yards per route run. Top 20, all those metrics. That all was with the worst version we have ever seen of Russell Wilson. He was 27th in QBR and 26th in passer rate. I just find it so hard to believe that Jerry Jeudy can't be a top 20 option, and this isn't the year he breaks out when he finally has all the pieces together now. Because before he's playing with Teddy Bridgewater and the days of Drew Lock, bunch of crap quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, who was clearly a shell of himself last year. And now you get Sean Payton, who I think can fix all those problems. You don't pay Sean Payton that kind of money to not have this offense work out. Nathaniel Hackett was a nightmare. Sean Payton's going to come in and clean all that up. And Jerry Jeudy, this could be the year we finally see Jerry Jeudy. First round pick Jerry Jeudy. Highly touted college prospect Jerry Jeudy. Finally put it all together. I have him going for 94 receptions on 104 targets for over 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns this year. Again, he's my wide receiver 15.
Your targets are a little off, I feel.
Oh, no, yeah, I don't have him for 104. Sorry, I just should be 141.
Okay, there it is.
141 targets. Yes, I'm like,
you said that, I'm like, wow, 90% catch rate. Wow.
No, 141 targets.
Yep,
That's only 26 more than Cortland Sutton for what that's worth.
Yeah.
So he's only averaging a target and a half more per game than Cortland Sutton. Just to put that into context, if that's going to be a rebuttal.
I just think, I mean, like you said, I both have wide receiver 21, and I got him like 3 points outside of my top 20. So I'm not like out on Jerry Jeudy by any means. I just don't know if we're going to see the true boom where he's pushing 1,300 yards. And the thing for me, and you have it in your stats too, is I just don't know how many touchdowns he's going to score.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? You only have him for 6. If he scores 8 or 9, all of a sudden he's pushing top 12, which could happen, right? That's in the range of outcomes. And I think one of the things we are going to be putting in our draft guide is our tiered rankings. Right.
Yep.
Because you'll be able to see, okay, wow, where does Jeudy actually fall in these rankings? Because that's kind of the range of outcomes we really see these players at. For me, I just like quick glance at my rankings, right? I got Jeudy down at 21, but I have him where he could finish as high as wide receiver 14 or 13. Right. I think that's in a range of where he could finish, but I just don't know if I'm as strong of a believer that he's going to flirt with 100 receptions and 1,300 total yards. Also, I want to thank you for the call out to the Short King reference from the TikTok I made.
I knew you would like that. I knew you would like that.
I knew you would
like that. I mean that's fair, right? Because that is the thing with Jerry Jeudy. We don't know how many touchdowns he's going to score. 1,200 yards is probably really high too. I think a lot of people are probably going to disagree with that. Because I'm going to pull up my stat book right now. He'd be averaging right around 13.5 yards per reception on that pace. But Russell Wilson was pushing the ball down the field last year too. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy, I believe the other number I didn't pull was his deep targets. Ty, if you have a rebuttal, go ahead and speak it now. Otherwise, find Jerry Judy's deep ball metric last year, but I believe they were career highs. I have it up right now. Yeah, he was 12th in deep targets last year, which is interesting because his average depth of target was 40, but Russell Wilson was still pushing the ball down the field to him last year at times.
So, Lucas, how much of your projection of Jerry Jeudy is kind of based around the idea that this Broncos run game may not be where it's at the end of the season, just because of Javonte's rehab with his knee injury, and then you've got Samaje Perine, who figures to be the lead back in Javonte's absence. So, how much of that situation factors into Jerry's projection?
I mean, so here's what I'll say. I have Javonte only missing 3 games this year, and he'll probably miss more than that if we're being perfectly honest with ourselves. So that factors in a little bit, I think. But again, that's only 3 games out of 17. Mm-hmm. I think my big thing is that at this point in both of their careers, I think we know who the better wide receiver is.
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy is better than Cortland Sutton. And why they haven't been able to distinguish that earlier in their careers, I think is far more about the quarterback play than it has been like the coaching or the situation for Jerry Jeudy. So I think this is the year where it's like Jerry Jeudy is clearly the better wide receiver here. Cortland Sutton cannot separate anymore. He's a jump ball guy and he can't even catch jump balls anymore. So why are we trying to force the ball to him? Let's get the ball into Jerry Judy's hands. Like if you're Sean Payton, that's all this is. Mm-hmm. Just let's take Mike McDaniel's system. Yeah. Like I don't think Sean Payton's not going to copy that, bar for bar, obviously, but like that Tua's going to throw for 5,000 yards last year because let's just get the ball in the playmaker's hands. And Jerry Judy's a playmaker. Cortland Sutton is not a playmaker.
Yeah.
Like let's make that very clear. So I part of it is just like, this is Judy's year to separate from Cortland Sutton. Before there was like some fog around like, oh my gosh, like Cortland Sutton might actually be something. He's not. Unfortunately he's not. And we're wrong on that last year, but Like, I think this is just the year that Judy is like the guy, and Sean Payton's like, all right, enough BSing around here. Like, let's start making some plays.
Yeah, I guess going off Ty's question, there's been those rumors about maybe Dalvin Cook signing. Just
Yep.
Would that affect your rankings at all? And if so, how much?
Yeah, so I mean, it probably would if you do have like a healthy, efficient running back that Sean Payton wants to get the ball to. I love Samaje Perine. I love all the coach speak he's getting. Like, I think he is a sneaky value right now. Not the next AP, but like I think Samaje could be like a sneaky value. I'm sorry, I had to slide that in there. He could be a sneaky value, but like Samaje, like let's not pretend he is an AP, right?
Yeah.
Like let's not put too much weight into the guy.
Yeah.
So, and like if Javonte were on the field perfectly healthy, like, yeah, that might affect it a little bit, but I'd probably still have Judy for like 134 targets.
Yeah. All right.
Like, he'd still be the lead target getter for me by, probably, 15, 20 targets.
That's what I figured. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on a healthy, fully healthy, more established running back in the backfield.
Yep. No, and that 100% checks out. All right, before we get to our next round of shocking projections, let's take a quick break to hear from our good friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back.
Yes, sir.
Let's dive into some more shocking projections here. If those weren't shocking enough, these might be more shocking. We'll see. Cameron, you went with Christian Watson, a guy you were significantly lower on than Tyler and I with your first shocking projection. I believe you're going to flip the script here a little bit with your second one, though.
Yeah. Before I get into it, I just got to say, I tried to do last week and we're back. And me and Ty discussed it. I just can't hit that note the same way you can. So I'm officially retiring it if I host, and that is all you. Alrighty. With that, the guy that I want to talk about right now is Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs. I have him as my running back 11. Ty and Lucas have him buried in their rankings on a running back 17. Disrespectful.
He sucks.
This is a guy who Dan Campbell has talked about in the same breath as Alvin Kamara, as Deebo Samuel. Even he has talked about him in the way of using him in the as more of a receiver and also a running back. I also want to just say before I get into it, I do have David Montgomery as the leading rusher in this backfield by close to 50 rush attempts. So I'm not expecting Gibbs to come in and take 200 plus carries. In fact, my projections for him, got him at 176 attempts, just under 900 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns, 92 targets, 74 receptions, 588 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I looked at the last 2 real elite receiving backs to come in by the way I value them is both Kamara and CMC. Both of those guys saw just around 120 targets and just under 100, or let me take that back, 120 rush attempts and just over 85 targets. And since that's what I have Gibbs statted out to beat both of those, I looked at since 2017, 20 running backs have seen 85 plus targets and 120 plus attempts. All of them have finished as a top 10 running back in fantasy points. Now, if you even take it a step further and you just look at guys with 85 plus attempts, all of those running backs have finished as top 20. And that list includes guys like Tariq Cohen, James White, J.D. McKissick, right? That's an ugly group of running backs right there, but they still finished top 20 just because they saw 85 plus targets. And I think that's something that Gibbs can do. He saw 44 receptions his last year at Alabama, and now he's in an offense that has Amon-Ra St. Brown and no one for the first 6 months, and then a very unproven Jameson Williams. 6 weeks, right? And then very unproven Jameson Williams coming into the offense after that. And all they've done is hype up his receiving work, his ability to catch the ball, his ability to run routes, his ability to get open in space. And again, using the 85 targets comes from, that was DeAndre Swift's 17 game pace last season. He had 70 over 14 weeks. So I think that's something that he could easily hit. And like I've said before multiple times, they didn't like Swift last year. They really like Gibbs this year. So I think they're going to give Gibbs even more than what we saw with Swift.
Interesting. So you have Gibbs statted out for 5 yards total.
Yep.
I was just doing the quick math on that because I'm like, where is the discrepancy in our rankings that you have him that high and I have him that low? And I mean, I have him for 85 targets, 68 receptions, 578 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the receiving game. In the rushing game, though, like that's where we differentiate, though, because I only have him at about 150, just over 150 totes for just under 700 yards. That's about 4.5 yards a tote.
Right.
Something I'm like, man, like 20 carries shouldn't put us 8 spots apart, but I guess it does in this case. I think my big fear is David Montgomery. If David Montgomery weren't there, Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 10 running back for me. No questions asked.
Sure.
I'm just concerned about, I think, total touchdowns. I don't think it's a guarantee he finds the end zone for how many touchdowns. I have him for 6 rushing and 2 receiving touchdowns.
I'm 6
like,
rushing and 3 receiving.
Yeah, so like I don't know if he hits 6. I feel like 6 might be a little bit optimistic, but at the same time, like this is a guy who could break off a big run at any point too. So I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I actually like him at his value in best ball drafts right now. I really don't mind taking him there. David Montgomery just put such a damper on him for me where like I don't know if I can make a top 12 claim on him. I could maybe get to top 15, but then again, I got to throw on about another 20 rushing attempts to probably do that. So Ty, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Like again, I don't really like I love the evidence you provided there in terms of the criteria that you put on those running backs. I just don't know if I can get there with David Montgomery.
No, I that's the same question that I've got is what does the rushing game look like between Gibbs and Montgomery? And I think it's fair to lean towards Montgomery in terms of who's going to be the lead back.
Yep.
It's just a matter of then just how much do you think Gibbs gets on the ground? And I will admit I'm probably a little too low on his rushing stats. Like I've got him at 133 for 537 and 2 touchdowns. Like I'm low, but that's just because I think Montgomery gets majority of the rushing work like we saw last year with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. So, if you, I accept pretty much any kind of opinion when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs. I just personally don't think the rushing workload elevates him into the top 15 with his receiving projections.
But yeah, that's Jahmyr Gibbs' saving grace, though, right? He could go for 90 targets this year. Right? Like that's not out of the realm of possibilities. And all of a sudden, we're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs because he's such an elite pass catching back. Like we're looking at him as a top 12 guy. Like it's in his range of outcomes. I just think David Montgomery put such a damper on that for me that I just can't quite buy into that.
Yeah, but the one thing is DeAndre Swift still was 25th in red zone attempts last year. Obviously not great, but for the amount he played, it was still pretty good. It was just goal line attempts. He only had 3. And that's where, Jamal Williams and the odds of Detroit being on the 1 yard line 13 times again this season is probably a little lower than what we saw last year. So that might end up, benefiting Gibbs a little bit if, he has a little bit extra burst than Swift. He's using a different way than Swift and getting carries still inside the 10, just probably not goal line carries.
And I think the last thing too, everyone will look at Jameson Williams and be like, well, what happens when Jameson Williams comes back? And I think the three of us share the same, idea that Jameson Williams misses rookie OTAs, misses a good chunk of training camp last year, and did not prove really anything in his rookie year. Now he's suspended 6 games again, where he has to be away from team activities. So the guy is almost like 2 off seasons behind everyone else in this offense. So when he does come back, it's not, I don't expect, neither do you, I'm assuming neither you guys, James Williams is not going to really make a huge impact on this team this year.
Yep.
I'll take him in best ball drafts. That's about it. I don't want him anywhere else. I think that's a good point though about the goal line opportunities though too. Cameron is like the Lions were kings of just getting stopped at the 1 yard line last year. Like that's insane to have that many opportunities from the 1 yard line and scoring on them all. You're right. That won't happen again this year. But I will say if it's within probably the 5 yard line, that's probably all Monty.
That's probably true.
But we also don't know how many times they'll be exactly within right. So
Yeah.
you could twist that argument so many different ways. There's a case for each. But I mean, again, we're not far off. You're just far more optimistic, and Tyler and I are playing it a little more cautious with David Montgomery in that backfield still.
Definitely.
All right, Ty. No matter who you choose for your next shocking projection, Cameron and I are going to be lower. So tell us which one we have to tell you you're wrong about.
Let's just rip the Band-Aid off of this one. You guys can tell me I'm wrong about Zach Ertz.
Wrong.
Very.
Yeah. Zach Ertz. Yeah, that we should just move on. Yeah,
we're done. Yeah, my last shocking projection. Let me tell you, he actually plays on the same team. No,
oh boy. No, I've got Zach Ertz statted to be my tight end 9 this year, and Lucas, you have him statted to be your tight end 20, and Cam is all the way out on Zach Ertz as his tight end 35.
Yep, you better believe it.
I have Zach Ertz ahead of guys like Evan Ingram, Dalton Schultz, and Pat Freiermuth. So you best believe when it comes to fantasy drafts, I am waiting until later rounds, because if Zach Ertz is going that late, he's my target. I currently have Zach Ertz projected to have 96 targets, 68 receptions, a little over 750 yards, 6 touchdowns. Here's the thing with Zach Ertz before he got hurt last year. And yes, I will address the injury that he's coming back from. He was the tight end 6 in fantasy points per game last year. He was on pace for 80 receptions, 117 targets, 690 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That would have been the tight end 4. Now he's the number 2 option in this offense due to DeAndre Hopkins departing. The injury concerns are real, though. Okay. He's a 32-year-old coming back from a torn ACL and MCL. But the difference, I shouldn't say the difference. The reason why I'm in on Zach Ertz, though, compared to a guy like Mike Evans, because I think, injuries are not a factor with Mike Evans. But the situations are kind of similar in that you just don't know exactly how productive the offenses will be this year. I'm willing to take the chance on Zach Ertz, though, because he is, 1, going so much later in drafts, but 2, I like the situation just a bit better. You know that Kyler Murray is coming back. You know, again, that he's the number 2 option behind Hollywood Brown. Yes, Trey McBride is there, but I don't think Trey McBride has earned his way to really kind of warrant legitimate competition for Zach Ertz. So I am willing to take the risk on Zach Ertz for those reasons. I understand if you don't. But for me, just looking at how drafts will go with tight ends, all that stuff, I'm willing to take the risk on Zach Ertz because let's say he, maybe the better way to explain it is this. He would have finished as a tight end 4 last year. He was a tight end 6 in fantasy points per game. I have him as the tight end 9. That does kind of my ranking does kind of bake in the injury risk and maybe him taking a step back in terms of just efficiency and production at his age and injury history. So have at it, fellas. You can roast me for having Zach Ertz as a tight end, top 10 tight end, but I'm a stick with it.
The injuries is really what it comes down to for me, right? I think skill wise, he's probably still better than McBride, but man, I just don't see at 32 coming back from an ACL and MCL and having Kyler coming back from an ACL. That all is what has just scared me away. And so I have him very low, and I also have McBride I have them very similar. And so I think he's going to split, which is already going to be a low target share for him next year.
I just don't know how you spend the 55th pick overall in the draft on Trey McBride and not use him. What's baffling about that is that they signed Zach Ertz to a long-term deal. right? Like Zach Ertz has the contract to back up exactly what you're saying, Ty. Like again, I listen to what you're saying, and I'm like, the only thing I disagree with is Trey McBride, because I think he will be a thing. Like, I don't think the Cardinals with Zach Ertz getting up there in age, with him now plenty of injury history on his resume, why put him through anything else? I don't know what to believe with this Cardinals offense and their tight end situation. Is there a world where Zach Ertz finishes top 10? You betcha. Yeah, like I think there is. I think that world has to exist with complete ignorance of Trey McBride. And I don't think they do that. That's my rebuttal. Also, my second rebuttal is that, what if I told you I think Rondale Moore is going to be the second option in this team?
You want Rondale?
Oh, why don't we have that drop ready?
Oh. Gosh, our producer sucks.
Okay, like
Jackson.
I don't want to bring this conversation to Rondale. I have him set it up for 128 targets this year.
Lucas,
You crazy.
Lucas,
How am I crazy? What's so crazy? Okay, like I get it shocking. There we go. There's a shocking stat for you. I won't tell you where I have him ranked. You gotta go look at our draft guide for that. But 128 targets. Tell me what's so awful about that.
It's just a lot.
new
The
offense.
Cardinals are gonna suck in every way possible.
I just don't know if I believe in Rondale that much.
I mean, so again, I'll revisit his target numbers. 8 targets, 10 targets. That's overlapping with Zach Ertz, where Zach Ertz had 10 targets in both of those weeks. I'm going to pull up Hollywood Brown's weeks, and I'm going to list you his targets as well. I just don't think this team is going to be in enough ball games to not throw the ball 30 plus times, 35 plus times. I'm going back, and this was early on the season. This was like weeks 4 and 5, I believe. Hollywood also had 11 and 10 targets in those respective weeks. So they threw the ball at least 30 times. And I'm thinking they're going to have to throw the ball at least 30 times in most games this year.
Yeah, I get it.
But that's where I'm at. I get it. Rondale Moore at 128 targets. That's pretty spicy, but I think that's also I don't think they're afraid to use him. And he's going to be a great short game option for Colt McCoy. Like Rondale, I only have Rondale averaging 9.1 yards of reception.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
But again, I think I just don't. Trey McBride exists. That's what I can't get over, and I can't get over them spending a second round pick on him, while Zach Ertz is also still on the team. There's a world where Zach Ertz finishes top 10. That world exists with complete ignorance of Trey McBride, and I feel like that'd just be stupid of the Cardinals to do. But I can't put it past them either.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take a look at where I've got Trey McBride, because when I'm going through the Cardinals, I'm keeping in mind that this regime didn't take Trey McBride in the second round.
That's fair.
And, they
also didn't trade for Zach Ertz.
This is also true, right? Because if what I said about McBride is true, then what you said about Ertz has to be true also, right? You can't just ignore the other.
Right.
So that's probably why, because I've got McBride getting 73 targets, but I've got him somehow with 31 receptions.
Oh,
which
we found a bug in the system.
I was gonna say, how in the world is Zach Ertz your tight end 9 then if he has 73 targets?
Yeah, well, someone hacked my stat projections. No, but I think it just comes down to whatever you get with Trey McBride is exactly what you get with Zach Ertz, but Zach Ertz is just a little more dynamic. Like we know Zach Ertz just as a veteran in this league, and I think for where Zach Ertz is going right now in drafts, especially what's his ADP in Underdog right
he's
now?
outside. He's
228 or 230.
Yeah, he's outside of the top 20 tight ends by a country mile.
He's a tight end 34. He is my last round target every single draft I'm in, because what do you have to lose at that price point? So
yeah, makes sense.
I understand that. We'll disagree. We'll move on to disagree, and we'll instead talk about the number 1 option of this offense. Who cares who the number 2 option is? We already know who the number 1 option is. Michael Wilson. I sneaky value. I love taking him in best ball. I love him with my last round pick in best ball. Not who I'm going to talk about though. We're going to talk about the wide receiver one in this offense. We're going to talk about Marquise Hollywood Brown. He is my wide receiver 18. I have him statted out for 90 receptions on 145 targets, just over 1,050 yards with 7 touchdowns. I don't understand how you two don't have Marquise Brown as a top 25 wide receiver. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Cam, you have him as your 28, Ty is your 26.
Oh, give me some credit at least. That's closer than 28.
Yeah, by 2.
It's only one away.
It's right.
Come on.
You're one ranking apart. Like, what's the difference? The Cardinals are going to be hot garbage this year. Want to take a crack at their projected win total?
It's 4.5, 3.5.
Oh, you're too mean. You're too mean.
17.
Undefeated. What? It's
5.5 wins.
Yeah, 5.5.
Wow.
5.5 wins. That is tied for the worst in the NFL. They're going to be hot garbage. All right. Their defense is putrid. They're going to be playing from behind in 15, if not all 17 games this year. And they're going to have to throw the football a crap ton. We saw how good Hollywood was without DeAndre Hopkins at the start of last season. Right? DeAndre Hopkins got traded. He's no longer on the team. We saw how good Hollywood was without him. He's the wide receiver 5 overall. 18.3 fantasy points per game in the first 6 weeks. He was 4th in targets with 64. 7th in yards with 485. He scored 3 touchdowns during that stretch. Hollywood was great. He saw 8+ targets in all but 3 of his active games last season. His 23.7% target share was 22nd. That will only go up this year. His 32.3% air yard share, the amount of times, basically the percentage of air yards he accumulated from the team's total. That was 17th with DeAndre Hopkins. That will go up again this year. And he was already on the field a ton with DeAndre Hopkins. He was 12th in both snap share and route participation. That will likely go up, if not stay at least inside the top 12. Now, the counter argument, I already know what the counter argument is. Lucas Kyler isn't going to play the entire year. He's not. You're right. I haven't projected to only miss 4 games. I think he could miss less. I also think he can miss more. And Colt McCoy isn't exactly the backup quarterback you want throwing the ball to Marquise Brown. Like, there's better options. But, like, I think if we're being honest, he's probably more competent than people want to give him credit for. He's certainly not the worst backup quarterback you could ever have, especially since he's been in this system and has had to fill in for Kyler before. So what it comes down to, right, is Marquise Brown will get volume this year, and he is going to get plenty of it because the Cardinals are going to be Garbo. That's it. That's it. So the fact that you two don't have a wide receiver 1 for what's probably going to end up being one of the more like pass-heavy teams in the NFL, a team that's going to have to pass more. I don't know what their run-to-pass rate is going to be. It's going to get into percentages, and then it's just wonky. But they're going to have to throw the ball more times than not. And a wide receiver 1 in that kind of an offense with a competent quarterback, Kyler Murray, right, will be back at some point this season. Like, the fact that he's not top 25 for you, like, kind of baffles me a little bit. Like, he's a top 25 lock for me, if not top 20. I've got my wide receiver 18 again. So I don't know how much of this for you two is no Kyler Murray / that offense is also just bad even with Kyler Murray.
For me, it comes down to, I think, just who I have in front of him, and I just don't feel comfortable moving any of them. It's Drake London, Deontay Johnson, who you can argue with me on. That one is one I really give you because I don't believe that Deontay Johnson's that much of a better receiver, whereas I believe Drake London is. Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley, I have both ahead of him, and that's because I believe in the Jaguars. Then DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Jerry Jeudy. Those are 4 that I think are in similar-ish situations. I think Jerry Jeudy's situation is getting better, but the other 3 of Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin, and DJ Moore are going to be on bad offenses. And I just have them scoring similar-ish touchdowns with a little bit more yards is kind of what I have than Hollywood right now. But that being said, he is 18 points from being my wide receiver 16. So, it's a very small range I have right there. And I think that's the biggest thing is I like Hollywood. I take him in every, pretty much every draft I'm in because he's
a
still
value right now.
33.
Right.
It's just, I happen to like certain guys just like the teeniest bit more and trust them a little bit more than this Arizona offense.
That's fair.
Yeah. My concern with Hollywood Brown is just touchdown production. And I have him with 5 touchdowns right now. If I give him another, he goes up to my wide receiver 23. And if I give him 2 more, he cracks my top 20 then. I just don't know how many points this offense is going to score. I firmly believe that James Conner is going to be really kind of the main option when it comes to scoring touchdowns for Arizona.
I agree.
We add in our tight ends in Trey McBride and Zach Ertz. And who knows? Jonathan Gannon is the head coach now. He comes over from Philly. Philly liked to do a whole bunch of trickery when it came into the red zone. Wonder if that's where we see a little bit of Rondale Moore action, right? So, who
up Rondale Moore for me, baby. Let's go.
Nobody up.
It's Rondale season.
There. I just, like I said, I have Hollywood Brown at 5 touchdowns, and that feels right. Like, I see a world where he can go higher than that, but 5 feels about right. And because of that, I have him with, wide receiver 1, type of targets, right? Wide receiver 1 type of receptions, over 1,000 yards. It's just the touchdowns that are keeping him out.
Yeah. Which is understandable. And maybe for context, I should throw out there, I only have the Cardinals throwing for 23 touchdowns this year. It's not like Kyler Murray and company or whoever the hodgepodge of quarterback situation is there. Like, it's not like I have them throwing 30 touchdowns this year. I just have the bulk of them going to Hollywood because, I think he'll just end up being the guy who ends up scoring the most, for the lack of a better description, right? Like, I have Rondale Moore with 4. I think that's high. There's Zach Ertz with 4. I have Trey McBride with 3. But I think Hollywood's the clear 1, and he'll get the touchdown respect that he deserves there. But I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he only scores 4 or 5 as well. That could happen with how bad this Cardinals offense is.
Yep.
All right, I'm looking at the time. We're running out of time here. Give me the last player that you all have a shocking projection at. Give me. Here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna rapid fire it. Give me the name of your player, where you have him ranked, where the other 2 fellas have him ranked, and a summary sentence as to why. And summary sentence, singular sentence. Cameron, I'll have you start. We'll go rapid fire.
Treylon Burks, I got him at wide receiver 33. Lucas at wide receiver 42. Ty at wide receiver 40. And the reason being, I believe in Treylon Burks, and the entire team, except for outside the running backs, I didn't count Derrick Henry, has 216 receptions over all their careers combined. And Chris Moore has 116 of those over 7 seasons. Moore has had the most receptions out of any player in one season with only 48. So I just think they have to throw the ball, and Treylon Burks is just going to be the beneficiary of a very lackluster wide receiver room.
I believe in Treylon too. I got to fix my ranking. Ty, who's your guy?
It's crazy you believe in the talent of Treylon Burks, but not Christian Watson. Anyway, my last shocking projection is Kenneth Walker. I've got him as my running back 18. Cam is got Kenneth at his running back 24 and Lucas at his running back 29. Kenneth Walker was
out. I'm so out.
Kenneth Walker was the 3rd in most breakaway runs, 3rd most runs of 20 yards or more. He was top 20 broken tackles and yards after contact. He's a big play waiting to happen, and I think he's going to be the red zone guy when they're running the ball. And I'm not afraid of Zach Charbonnet. I think Kenneth Walker will still get his, but the only difference is Kenneth Walker just does not get receiving work in this offense. But that's okay because he'll make up for it in rushing touchdowns.
Najee Harris, after a few adjustments, running back 18. His efficiency is doo-doo, and I think the Steelers like Jalen Warren a little bit too much for Najee's liking. I have Najee getting more touches this year. His efficiency doesn't make up for it, though, and I think his touchdowns stay pretty consistent. I have him at 8 touchdowns and 3 receiving touchdowns. Technically, same amount of receiving touchdowns and 1 more rushing touchdown than last year. So
huge uptick.
huge uptick in production for Najee this year. But that due to efficiency, even with changes on the offensive line, I don't think Najee goes from a sub 4 yards per carry rusher to all of a sudden, nearing 5 yards per total. I have him at like 4.1 yards a rush. So
For sure.
I just don't believe in Najee's efficiency, which is absolutely killer. So That's it. Oh, you two have him at the running back 12. I forgot to mention that. That's our discrepancy there. That's now it for another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast already, make sure you do that down in the description. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know when new episodes are up. And if you haven't bought our draft guide yet, what are you doing? You can get it for free. You just have to sign up for Underdog Fantasy using the promo code Fellas and join any of their contests. You can join a random $3 best ball draft with random people you don't even know. You can go ahead and do that. $3. That's a 70% discount?
Yeah, crazy.
You just got to do that and you get our draft guide for free. That's it. That is all you have to do. You can find that link down in the description of the audio podcast you're listening to, or on the YouTube video as well. Or you can head over to underdogfantasy.com and simply just sign up and insert the promo code Fellas. That's all you have to do. We're grateful for our friends over there for helping us really fuel and pump out this draft guide for y'all this year. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. I'm Lucas Wenzel at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, at CamLaw FFF for Cameron, at Tyler_Plath from Tyler. We will see you all later this week. NFC North divisional breakdown. That's what's coming next.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk about the NFC North Skull Vikes later this week. We'll see you all then. Deuces.
Deuces.